or why, although I guess I have a pretty good idea. All I know is he came back, and he comes back for all of us, whenever we're in need. A word about the theme, maybe the 6th or 7th time you've heard this theme mentioned today. If not when, now. If not now, when. That's not the way it was put. If not you, who. I almost burst out laughing when Doug called me on the phone maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago and said, "We've come up with this theme. Would you talk about it?" And I wasn't about to laugh because of the humor involved, but rather because of the significance of the theme. It parallels almost to a T the major themes of my life since I was in the single digits. I mean, 8 or 9. And then a teenager, I had a passion for finding the answers to 3 burning questions in my life. I had that same passion go into my 30s, through the Peace Corps years, 50s, 60s, into my 70s. 2 years ago, maybe. I'll be 74 soon. 2 years ago, those questions have been resolved. They're put to rest. I now know the answers to those questions. And the questions are, who am I? Why am I here? And what is it all about? Well, again, getting back to Doug, after I hung up, I thought, somebody could be listening to those questions and think of them as being somewhat ambiguous. If I were to ask 10 of you to come up right now and stand in front of the mic and tell me your interpretation of what those themes mean, I'll bet you I would get 4, 6, who knows, maybe 10 different interpretations. I've got the mic. I've got the podium. So you're doomed to listen to my interpretation of what that theme means. In my opinion, not just for myself, but for all of us. We're talking about Baba's most important request of all time for us, to awaken to our one true self. That's it. I could sit down now. That's as far as I need to talk. That's Baba's overarching request, command for each of us. He said it so many times, and you've heard it here today. I am God, I am God, I am no different than God. Baba says the time for realization, meaning your self-realization, is now. Not 15 lifetimes from now, not 15 minutes from now. But for many of us, we're simply too busy, and we have this wonderful, I don't want to use the cop-out word, but we have this excuse as to why we can't afford to break away from our dharma, from our duty. We're forming a family, we're finding a spouse, we're having children. We're keeping our jobs so we can afford to pay for the house, save money for college education, save money for mom and dads on both sides. They may need it someday. They may fall ill someday. We have dharma to do. Those who do say they know something about the question, why not consider working towards your self-realization now, might say, I know that question. I've had an answer. I'm comfortable with myself and my skin when it comes to realizing who you are in this lifetime. I know about it. Intellectually. I think the question that needs to be asked of me, about me, and perhaps anybody else who wants to grab onto it, is to learn about it experientially. That's the key. Have you ever tasted the sweet nectar? Oh, so sweet nectar, even for a second, maybe a minute, maybe in your lifetime, about what that must be? I'm not only sure there are people in this room who are already there. Just this day, I won't tell you who, just this afternoon, I won't tell you who, just within the last hour, I won't tell you who you all know, I was talking about what I consider to be self-realization in front of my eyes. And that person, male or female, acknowledged that I was getting close. So it's happening now. That's the point I want to really dwell on. The first step in the process of awakening is to learn who you really are. And I'll go through the drill one more time for those of you who haven't been to Prashanti to hear Baba say it. To understand, of course, who the 3 Sujitas are, the 3 Teds are, the 3 Aruns are, the 3 Lakshmis are. Jody would say she thinks she knows who the real Ted is. I believe she knows the real Ted more than any person walking the earth today, including myself. I would suggest I know who the real Ted is, more or less. You know, I have to get over arrogance and ego and a misunderstanding of who I think I am. And then, of course, Baba always says, And then there's the real Ted, totally unlike what anybody imagines. In fact, that person doesn't have a name. There is no Ted. You know, when you really start to take for as seriously as you can his huge task for all of us to see this as a drama, to see Maya for what it really is meant to be seen as. It is our biggest job, heads and shoulders above everything else we'll ever contemplate until our last breath on this earth, as Phyllis Crystal told me, to strive as much as you say to live from your high C, like the orange juice, but she means, of course, your higher consciousness. And she would know. I interviewed her on her 102nd birthday, several months before she passed on. For the other question, the two-part question, Doug, that you gave me, if not you, who? Well, that one's an easy one. I can hit that out of the ballpark after coming up with somewhat of an answer to the first one. There is only you. There is only the you. There is only the I am presence, the I am witness, the I am God, the I am observer, the I am being. That's who you are. That's who you are. So remember, we have two big W's we're working with here. When and who, to which I would add a third, arguably even more important than those two. I won't say that because Doug will become my enemy. Those two are very important questions, but my W is why. Why? Why reveals our curiosity, something I didn't have for many years in my life. If you don't have curiosity, you're like a lump of sugar, and I'm being kind. And I was a lump of sugar, not to degrade myself, but curiosity kicks in at various ages in our lives. We're not born with it, although I met some youngsters today who certainly have it way before I ever dreamed of getting it. All my life when I was a student, I was good at one thing, daydreaming. I could never get motivated about my classwork. Homework, forget about it. Daydreaming was much more accessible, much easier to do, and much more fun. But I was never an average student when it came to finding answers to those three questions I told you about at the outset, which were the driving force in my life. People would think I'm kidding, because I guess I looked like I was kidding. People would come into the newsroom when I was 68. No, not 68, I was retired by that time. So when I was 63 or so, and they'll say, "Where's Ted?" And so, "I don't know where he is." Somebody said, "When I saw him, he's, it's 10 o'clock, it's an hour before news time, he's out walking the halls in his stocking feet as he does every night, muttering to himself, 'Who am I and why am I here?'" You would too if you were in the television news business. But after 70 years, I found the answer to those questions. And I'll try to relate them because it's very personal. I can just give you broad strokes. And this only applies to you. So who am I? Well, I'm just like you. I'm Sat Chidananda. I'm being, awareness, and bliss. But I no longer know it intellectually as I did for all my life. I now put the pieces together to the extent where I now know it experientially. That much. Real small. I learned it through meditation. TM came into my life. Fives was talking about it this morning in 1975 when I got the biggest job of my life to be the 6 and the 11 o'clock anchorman at the ABC station in Cleveland. Once again, ill-prepared, undeserved, too young. Who made that decision? Well, I'm the cheapest guy available. Okay. No, ABC in Cleveland was in the big times. It was the 6th largest TV market in the country. This was serious work. You had to be at your peak performance intellectually, not politically, but physiologically, and in every other sense with your energy. At the last half hour of everybody's day, from 11 to 11:30, I had to be in command of whatever I possessed. I had to be in command of it. So I took TM. And they assured me that if you do what they tell me to do, meditate for 20 minutes twice a day, 10 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock at night, you will glide into the studio and deliver the news, no matter what the news is. And it was pretty much that way. I was really shocked. I learned a whole lot from it, and I learned something else. 10, 15 years down the road, being a meditator. I didn't think a whole lot about it then. I've put it together since then. Maybe 15, maybe 20 years down. I've been doing this for a long time. They tell you to not set your clock, don't set an alarm, don't look at your wristwatch. Your inner self, your higher consciousness will tell you when 20 minutes is up, then you come out of your meditation. It was true. It really worked that way. Except on this one day, 15, 20 years after I started practicing, I felt so good. Everything felt good. I was thinking good. You're not supposed to think when you're doing TM, but whatever the thoughts I had were pleasing, and I felt joy, and I felt peace. I won't use the bliss word because that's too charged, but I felt a lot of good things, and I was wondering, maybe I should come out of my meditation now. I'm kind of lost in my minutes. And I looked around myself and the clock on the back on the wall, and I hadn't meditated 20 minutes. I had meditated an hour and 20 minutes. Never done that before. There's very little else I remember about that event except for one item. I also remember quite distinctly, and I can put myself back in that position, in that chair right now. I remember thinking that if I could give away, detach myself from all my worldly possessions and friends, to have that experience continue, I would do it in a heartbeat. It's never come back. It may have only been 5 minutes or a minute. It may have been an hour and 15 minutes. I don't know. But that's who I am today, a person who's learned to live from what Baba's goal for all of us is experientially to, a millimeter. But it's enough for me. So why am I here? I'm finally here to take that one speck of happiness, let's just call it that, not bliss, not self-awakening, and to cultivate it, and to water it, and to nurture it, and to love it, and to let it grow, let it grow, let it grow. And I hope to be around a lot longer, because I'd like to see what it turns out to be one day. And what is it all about? The third question? Well, for those who are awakened, and I'm looking at some of them right now, my eyes are darting so I don't divulge any secrets here. And I know there's probably plenty more in this massive crowd here. What it's all about is to wear that accomplishment that you own, not me, but you, to wear it silently, and to let your demeanor, let your countenance speak of your love, and to share that love with everybody around you, everybody, and especially those who really need it, and we know who those are. A little now about how I came to find Baba. That's easy for me to answer real quickly. Jody Cleary, who's not here, led me from my head understanding of Baba to my heart understanding of Sai Baba. And it's a beautiful story. I wish you were here just to tell you that story. But there were a couple of morsels that came before I met Jody Cleary. In 1968, I was in Paraguay in the Peace Corps for 2.5 years. That was the second poorest country in all the Americas behind Haiti, and it still is today. It's very, very poor. I was living in the interior. I had jobs with young boys. I almost called them Sai youth, but they're Paraguayan boys. I loved my job, and I came home after a hard day in the fields, and I sat on my veranda outside of my little hut in a handmade rocking chair, paging through old magazines that the Peace Corps office would send me and old books. One magazine had no cover on it. I didn't even know what it was. It was a news magazine. And I turned this page and I turned that page, and there he was in all of his radiant splendor. Sri Satya Sai Baba. Never heard of him, never saw him. He had a big smile on his face. He was standing under pinstripes in a tent, and he was surrounded by 6 or 8 Western boys dressed in white at his feet. What a strange place this must be. I can't remember a single word of the story. How many news stories do you recall reading 50 years ago? But I've never forgotten Sai Baba's name nor his face. And so earlier when I started talking about saying, by alleging, by fabricating that you're looking at a 73-year-old Sai youth, in a manner of speaking, I am. I was 23 years old then. I can't tell you that anything drastic happened, but he plants seeds that are really small, and took me years to figure that out. There's a couple of more stories to go with that from my Peace Corps years that I know now was Baba. Maybe I'll talk about those tomorrow when I have more time. I want to try to keep this train on the rails as much as I can. So that was when I first laid eyes on his form from Paraguay. Fast forward to 1992, Baba came into my life once again. I'm on a jet plane flying around the world, mostly vacation time off, but I'm also doing some interviews. In fact, I have exactly one interview lined up in Calcutta with Mother Teresa, my first visit to India. I'm in her ashram slash hospice slash monastery, and I bend my 6'3" frame down to her 4'10" manifestation of life, and I was forewarned that she can be tough as nails. She couldn't have been sweeter to me. She gave me a handful of rosaries and blessed them in my hand, and then she said, I have a present for you, or a gift, or a surprise. Jody wanted me to think about what her exact words were. I thought she said a present. So I'm expecting a present to come out somewhere. And she says, the people you're staying with, they're wonderful people. They have a cook who prepares all the food for all the dying men, women, and children here every Friday of the year, and I would like to offer you the opportunity to feed the dying men and boys. Well, if you gave me an hour to think of words, I didn't even bother trying to. Maybe serene and loving, maybe those two words would be the first that would jump to mind. It was just a wonderful experience. 3.5 days went by in a flash. I'm in the driveway ready to go on to my next location, London. We're going to the airport. The woman of the household comes up and she says to me, now that you've traveled halfway around the world to meet one of the spiritual icons of your tradition, Mother Teresa, I invite you to come back and travel halfway around the world again so that we might introduce you to our spiritual icon. His name is Sri Satya Sai Baba. I looked at her and I smiled and I said, I know who Sai Baba is. I remember from my Peace Corps days in Paraguay. Her jaw almost dropped. Well, this American coming around the world, and this news guy knows about Sai Baba. She runs into the house. She picks up 2 books and about 3 or 4 pamphlets and plops them in my hand. She shows me all the trinkets, the necklaces, the rings, the brooches. And as I'm getting into the car, I'm trying to remember this exactly, and I'm a little fuzzy about this, but this is what I think she said, because there have been people who wondered whether or not Baba ever went to Calcutta. But I'm pretty sure I remember her telling me, I mean, this has been a long time ago. Oh, one more thing I want to tell you, young man. Baba doesn't come to Calcutta anymore, but he used to back when, and he would stay in our house. In fact, he stayed in the room you just stayed in. And then I found out it's the guest room on the first floor. Everybody stays in that room. But nonetheless, the significance of it did not reach me back then. It took years for me to put it together, and I don't even know if it happened for sure, but it sure makes a good story. And it sure makes me feel that much closer to Baba. So, 1996 rolls around. Sai Baba comes into my life yet again. Talk about being reeled in with a long line and a slow job of reeling in the line. That's me. 1968 to the late 90s. I met Jody in 1996. We're at a conference on spirituality where there's representatives of 17 of the world's religions and wisdom traditions in Cleveland. It was a wonderful talk given by Houston Smith, and I'm the MC. I introduce him. Afterwards, I meet Jody. I meet a lot of people there as the MC, and Jody and I hit it off right away. I was pretty shy, pretty bashful, and we're talking about spirituality in vague terms, and why don't we go to dinner and talk about this more on Thursday night? And she said yes, and I went there, and I really enjoyed the discussion we had. Again, very general. I didn't reveal too much. She would have thought I was more crazy perhaps than I appeared to be, and she told me some interesting things that I knew I wanted to find out about. And I think I recalled going this way. I asked her if we could do this again, another Thursday night, after, for dinner and conversation over coffee about our spiritual lives. And she smiled and said, no, I don't think I'll be able to do that. So I'm a reporter. I spoke right up. How about a week from then? How about 2 weeks from then? No, Ted, I'm sorry. Don't take offense, but you see, I won't be here. I'm leaving. I'm going out of the country. Where are you going? The reporter pipes up. Well, I'm going to India. Well, I've been to India, the reporter says. I know there's like 1 billion plus people there, more or less. And I've met a lot of people. Maybe I know who you're going to go see. What's that person's name? I can assure you that you've never heard of that person's name. Maybe a tiny handful of people from the whole state of Ohio have ever heard his name. It's Sri Satya Sai Baba. And I looked at her and said, I know who Sai Baba is. Well, I saw my value rising a little bit in her estimation. At least a little bit. And she was a little excited about this, and we got to know each other a little bit better, and she had a couple of trips to India, and finally she's on a trip to India with a group of women who are good friends of all of us in Sai study circles, and Jody takes a vow of silence for the whole time she's there. So she was a misfit in this room of chatting women the whole time, and their chatting is wonderful until it turns to be slightly less than wonderful because they're puzzled, if not upset, that Baba's not giving the women any attention. Not just them, but the women in general. He's not stopping for letters. He's not telling women to go into the interview room. He's just breezing on by in a couple of minutes and spending all of his time with the men. Baba, that's not fair, is the impression that she got from these women. They're in the darshan hall. Baba's not there yet. Jody's talking to him from her heart. Baba, women need you. We would love to have you spend some time with us. A number of minutes pass by, the music starts up, Baba walks in, goes right up to Jody and says, go. Bring your friends with you. And they walked into the interview room, and Baba comes up to Jody and says, the question all of you have heard or heard about many times, how is that boy? Baba, I know that you know everything. You know I don't have children. You know I don't have boys. How's that boy? You mean my father? He's in his 80s. You mean Ted? A whole other story I'll titillate your whistle with is that Baba broke my ankles so that I wouldn't go see him when they went to see Sai Baba. Different story. Remind me and I'll tell it to you tomorrow. And Baba says, he will come after marriage. Well, that was never on the drawing board. That was never discussed. That was never thought about. And guess who never found out about it until almost a year later when I proposed to her? She had to keep that to herself. And furthermore, this may be the best part, I don't know. Baba left and walked down to talk to some of the other women there who was just pleased as punch to see his form, and he spun on his heels before he said a word, and he looked back at Jody and he puts his hand up here and he says, I will change that boy. My first direct involvement with Sai Baba. Direct involvement. Because you know he means that. He's going to change you. He's going to change you when he says that. Of course, he does it anyway, unannounced. But that was pretty impressive to me. I literally floated out of the interview room. I tripped over air. It wasn't over my feet or an obstacle on the floor. I just tripped, almost fell on my face. In fact, I did fall down. And I'm outside, and Jody's out there, and she's so happy. She was in the audience. She was in the darshan crowd because she had to leave a couple of days after I did because her father wasn't doing well. He was fine then, and she came over and was there in time to see me go in and come out of the darshan hall. I didn't know she was in there. I think that's how it went. And she came up to me and she said, I see you're wearing a ring. And I said, yeah, it's a great surprise to me. But I have other news. And I think I must have omitted this in my storytelling about Baba, but I'll tell it to you right now. When I had a chance to speak with him in the darshan, not the darshan, but the interview room, when we came out, that's where he made the ring for me. You talk too much. Well, everybody broke out laughing but me. I was very humiliated. About another 4 seconds pass, he looks to the left and looks to the right and comes back to me and says, next question? And I asked about 4 or 5 more questions, and the final question went like this. Baba, I'm a reporter from America. I'm here because I've heard so much about you. I'm really enjoying being here. I can't tell you how much I love being in your presence. Can I take your name to America, Baba? No, don't take my name to America. He said, "Take my love to America." I walked out of the interview room, and that's when I met Jody, and she said after hearing that, "We've got to go find the number 2 person in this ashram and ask them to set up the interview you're going to have with a news crew coming in from Bangalore," and taking that video back to Cleveland, Ohio. We go to Mr. Chakravarti's office. He's stern, he's taciturn, he's powerful. He looks at me and he says, "What do you want?" And we're both sitting there, and I say, "This is Jody Cleary, and I'm Ted Henry, and I'm a reporter, and I just came out of Baba's interview room," and he said I could take his love to America. I would like to arrange for an interview with Sai Baba. You want to interview Sai Baba? He raises his hand up at least that high, and he comes down with a loud thud, and he says, no, actually he came down like this. "That will never happen." And it didn't, not with me or anybody else as far as I can tell. Nobody ever interviewed him, Baba, that is. And I didn't either. And I'm in shock, but then he starts to show a warm side to us. He didn't relent on his pledge that that would never happen, but he turned so warm towards us, I think he maybe felt badly a little bit. He invited us to come back, and every time we'd go back with our 18 trips to see Sai Baba, he always spent an hour with us as his offices evolved around the ashram, and he's one of these guys who would be pontificating, but they weren't pontificating statements at all, like 30,000 feet philosophically. David Grease is here. He's a philosopher. He's a PhD, and Mr. I can't think of his name right now, Chakravarti, would just get launched and mesmerize us for the remaining part of an hour about life as he sees it and about life with Baba as he sees it. And he just turned out to be a peach of a guy. And inadvertently, he did allow me to take Baba's love and name around America and around the world, because he was super encouraging of our Sojourns work. He looked at Sojourns videos, and he just gave us every positive indication to continue that work. And we did take Baba's name to 142 countries. So, how does any of this, you're wondering, tie in with my theme, self-realization? I know it seems rather far afield right now. It was over those next 22 years that we got to meet increasing number of Sai devotees who were coming into their own sense of self-realization, if not full-blown. Devotees who were coming under our gaze were people we were trying to interview. It was a privilege, it was totally undeserved to meet these souls. I'm coming now to one of the main purposes of my talk here today. It's a little bit of a sidebar. It will only take a couple of seconds to share with you from my main point about how I feel we're all here to obey Baba's command to work towards our self-realization. What makes me sad is that I love study circles. I've attended them from the get-go 22 years ago. Study circles all over America, study circles in India, study circles around the world. I just really think they've changed my life. You know, I was asleep at the switch as an academic student, and I was trying to make up for it spiritually this way. We talk about Baba's love, Baba's seva, Baba's quotes, Namasmarna, all very important topics, but I have no recollection whatsoever of the subject of working towards self-awakening coming up, except for the handful of times that I brought it up. And that was always dealt with by complete silence. And I try to put it together. Why would people not want to be interested in this subject? Baba talked about it 1,000 times. It's just never brought up. My guess is that most people just don't like to talk about something that they feel is way beyond their grasp. And I'm here to tell you, not from my personal experience, but by knowing others, it is not from our personal grasp, too far away. So these are the 3 reasons why I talk about this subject. I'm a one-trick pony. If anybody ever invites me to come talk, I'll give you the same talk again. No variations. It's because I feel it's so important. The 3 reasons I feel strongly about this, it's because of my own brief experience, minuscule though it was, not self-awakening, but maybe a little nugget, a morsel on my tongue. Number 2, because in Sojourns interviews, we encounter an ever-growing list of people who are there. And because, number 3, so few others in the Sai fold in general, I'm sure you're exceptions. I've never been to your Sai centers before. I would bet that you're exceptions, but the ones I've been to, it's just not brought up. Nobody seems to want to talk about it, even though it's his strongest urge for us. Some brief words about Baba, and then I'm going to get to a video I brought along on this topic. First of all, from comments he made to students at Kodaikanal in 1985, you are in 100% body consciousness, not 99. You're in 100% body consciousness, but do not stay this way, meaning in this lifetime. Remove that. What will remain will be Atma consciousness. Then there will be no longer anger, hatred, envy, jealousy, hunger, no desire whatsoever. And I know people in this room who fit that category. Only complete Ananda. Bliss, 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 bliss. It looks like he said it about 10, 12 times. Do not spend time thinking about your relationships to individuals or to the world. Do not follow the mind. Follow the conscience instead. It is above the mind. And lastly, he says, to become self-realized, the first step is to develop self-confidence. That was a surprise when I read this. Have self-confidence that you are God, and then you will know that you are love. The prayer of surrender. I used to walk out of the Western Canteen Hall and see that tacked up on the wall as you're exiting from lunch or from dinner. It's attributed to Sai Baba, though as a journalist I've not been able to verify that on my own, but it's there. It hasn't been torn down. Why get agitated, Baba says. Let me take care of all of your business. I am waiting for nothing else than for you to surrender to me. That will be your awakening. And then you do not have to worry anymore about anything, meaning in this lifetime. And finally, some words from something I've been hearing more and more talked about, attributed to Baba. I heard it just a week and a half ago in the last satsang I've been to over in the home of Sharon and Sam Sandweiss. They've been having satsang in their home for 44 years. 44 years. Gleaning from Sam's and Sharon's 80 visits with Baba and even more meetings with Baba. So they have some experience under their belt. When Sam said this, I perked up my ears. He quoted Baba saying, "My dear children, there is no longer time for slumber. You have been asleep and dreaming for thousands of lifetimes." We were talking about Maya earlier. Come with me now. Separation is no longer the order of the day. I have separated myself from myself so that I could love myself more. That experience is finished. I want all my selves to return and merge into me, the one self. Let go of the past. I can't tell you how many times my past has come up in my thought system lately. Stop trying to find out what you think you missed in childhood. I got to be careful here, or in marriage. You will never find anyone who is enough. Wow. I have asked all my devotees to repeat the mantra, I am God, I am God, I am no different from God. And then he makes it's not a request, it's not a pointing, it's not an urge, it's not a recommendation, it's a command. Do this, he says. Do this, it will be more helpful than anything you can do. So let's take a look at the video now. I hope somebody on the light switch brings all the lights down, because some of the video in the next 20 minutes is quite old. Old for me anyway. I shot it. And this is Sojourns. I was asked by Doug specifically to make a video so I wouldn't stand up here and bore you too long. And some of these people I believe to be self-awakened, while others are in the process. So my theme for this weekend is to allow others around us, such as the people you're about to see, nudge us even more so to our own self-awakening. And our theme, your theme and my theme for this weekend, is to answer that question, those two questions: if not now, when? If not you, who? Roll the video, please.
Welcome to Sojourns. Seen over the decades in more than 142 countries, with 6.5 million views. Sojourns, video interviews from around the world with people in spiritual pursuit. And we're now celebrating our 22nd anniversary. And to commemorate this milestone, a sample of the 425 interviews produced by Sojourns.
Hari Om Tat Sat Namah Shivaya.
Since 1975, singer, writer, teacher Sunam Tenzin has been with Sai Baba, a Buddhist from Sikkim, India, bordering with the Kingdom of Bhutan. Sunam has an amazing depth of experiences and lessons learned from Sai Baba.
Sai Om Tat Sat Namah Shivaya. The moment I saw him, again I would say it was love at first sight.
Really?
Yeah, I felt that I am looking at God. One of the greatest gifts in the entire history of mankind. I haven't heard of anyone telling any individual that you are God. Once Swami asked me, do you ask your mother for any testimony whether you are her son? It was never required. It was a gut feeling that yes, I'm her son.
Yes.
She is my mother. So feeling about God is like that. In 1977, he called us in for interview, and then he said, I had given you a very good life and you have completely, taken it for granted. I gave you, your youth you have abused. But then I had gone there not with any expectation for a new lease of life, because I knew I was dying. I was very sick. Then I said, Swami, I have come here to die at your lotus feet. Then Swami lifted me and said, no, it's not easy to die. Swami said, it's not that easy to die, you have to live. Then he created Devotee and said, breathe in.
So he did that with force.
With force. And I did that. I took a full breath in. Okay, I was healed that moment. And he said that now you live your life properly.
But Swami is my best friend. The best way to put it is Swami's work is an addiction. It has become a part of my life. I can't imagine my life without Swami. The key thing which my parents did, which I'm so thankful for, is making Swami a part of every single aspect of my life. I don't get stressed before exams, or I don't think of things as difficulties, because I know that there's always one person who's going to be there for me.
Baba once said, if you want to be a good teacher, be forever a student. If you want to be a good student, forever want to be a teacher. So if you want to transform yourself, the best way to be is reach out and serve someone else. What Baba is teaching is have a lifestyle. What is a lifestyle? You see, we don't need, it's not a group of people to come in one place and put one Baba's picture there and clap their hands and Sai Baba, Sai Baba. We make him a cult. And it become a very, very narrow. That is not what Baba is. Swami is trying to tell us now, man, listen, I'm here to make you happy.
Baba says we are part of nature too. You swing from star to star. You shine as dewdrops on the petal of a rose. You are part and parcel of all this manifestation, which is me. Ted, I do want to tell you how beautiful Baba is and how joyful we are to know him and to be his friend and to be in his presence.
They are affectionately known as the Pink Twins, Moya and Dorothy O'Brien, identical twins from Australia, and longtime followers of Indian holy man Sri Satya Sai Baba. This interview was recorded in the Pink Twins apartment in Prashanti Nilayam in December 2003.
It's from the Old Testament. No one is a prophet in their own land.
I see.
You can be a prophet somewhere else. People will believe you if you go somewhere else. But if you try to preach and be a prophet in your own land, nobody will believe you or follow you.
Everything changed in my life. Everything. I used to have a very bad temper. People who knows me now, after Sai Baba, don't believe that. They cannot imagine me with a bad temper. I used to be a very angry person. I was angry at the whole world. That was one of the big changes that I experienced. Now instead of being angry, I have been more peaceful. I am more loving. I am more
interested in helping people. Before it was mostly me. There are many things that I can say about this transformation, but the main thing is the inner happiness and peace that I live every single day from day to day that has for me no price, that I couldn't find and I will never find anywhere but in Swami.
Swami says, and now don't get shocked by this statement, but Swami does say that there is only one reason for which we were given the human life. There is only one reason for which we exist, only one purpose, and that purpose is to realize our own divinity. God may seem not to answer, but Swami has always said that there is no prayer which is unheard by divine. Swami.
Welcome to Sojourns.
All of what I see is because of the fact that I see Swami and I know I'm doing it for him, and I feel good about it.
He is Srinivas Rao, a scientist from San Francisco, California.
How have you changed?
Phenomenally. Firstly, I know it is he that watches all over us.
And from the mid-1960s, he has been a long-time follower of Indian holy man Sri Satya Sai Baba.
I mean, at times he does speak to me. I know that, and it looks, as I said, I'm a scientist, and maybe I didn't mention that, and so I still sometimes think about me and say to myself, how could that be? And yet he proves to me it is.
It is a wonderful story that begins in Vrindavan, a story told by a humble, loving man of little ego.
It happened at 3 o'clock in the morning. I got myself into such a state that I tried calling what's called Lifeline in Australia.
Yes, we know
because I was really concerned about where to from here. And I got put on hold for 15 minutes. Okay.
Don't commit suicide for 15 minutes. I'll get back to you.
I had elevator music, and eventually I hung up. And being 3 o'clock in the morning, I didn't want to wake anybody else, and I literally got onto my hands and knees, and Baba was the first thought that came to my mind.
Sai Baba.
Sai Baba. The joy and the love inside that I feel, that we actually have that opportunity to live so differently amongst everybody and to walk amongst everybody so differently than what we have been doing in the past. As you said yes. I said yes, and I ain't going back.
Richard Lubner has never seen Sai Baba alive, nor was he ever a follower of Sri Satya Sai Baba during Baba's lifetime. From sheer desperation to bliss, Lubner only began to follow Sri Satya Sai Baba just 6 months prior to this interview. What follows an astounding account of one man's journey from his mind to his heart.
What I've absolutely loved and confident about Swami's teachings and just this way of being is it's all about love. It's all so simple. It's all about love. You can't go wrong. I don't know what there is to not understand. At the end of the day, this is the most clear-cut, simple formula I have ever come across.
Then it was 1999. My father asked me to go to India to see Sai Baba. So when my dad said, this is God, I found it very, very hard to believe. I actually thought he had lost the plot and was a little bit crazy.
The improbable story of Sai Baba being discovered by Keith Banfield.
He's transformed my life in so many different ways. As a Catholic, he's helped me to have a great appreciation and love for Jesus and all other religions as well. It's amazing how he manages to do that.
This was an experience that happened to me when I was 17, when I was at home when I heard a knock on the door, and I was making a dress for Shirdi Sai Baba, and I was cutting an orange color dress. And my mother was talking on the phone, the doorbell rang, and I opened the door and Swami was standing outside, Sati Sai Baba. He said, not orange, I always wore white. And that's during that time it really increased a lot. Everywhere I would look outside the window, I used to be watching TV and I could hear, and I'd look at Swami and say, come to me, come to Puttaparthi, come. And I used to think, oh my God. And I used to ask my brother, what do you see outside this window? He said, nothing. What do you mean, what do you see? There's nothing outside this window. I said, do you see Swami? Do you see Satya Sai Baba? He said, no. I used to not call him Swami. I used to call him Satya Sai Baba at that time. I said, no, I don't see Satya Sai Baba. So these experiences grew so much, I used to write to my mom. I said, you know, I don't know who this man is, but he's bothering me. The last 2 years, he's not left me. I used to see him, I was a lab tech, I used to be working on my experiments, and I would see him in front of me. You know, he would just appear in front of me and say, I have come to save you, come.
You weren't daydreaming, this was...
No, I would not want a thing. He was not somebody I worshipped or was devoted to in any way. It's been such a blessed experience for me, this entire thing of knowing God, not through a temple or through any kind of education or through any kind of other teaching, but knowing God through your own self.
Welcome to Sojourns, and to the story of how a strong, young, smart, vital man in England, confined to a wheelchair, found his life changed by Sai Baba.
We did some tests and they said you've got this type of muscular dystrophy, so your muscles are gradually going to waste away and you'll end up in a wheelchair at some point. There's no real treatment or cure for it, or nothing they can do. I went to see Sai Baba to help him cure me, and I went there and there was a chain of events that happened that basically led to me falling over in front of the Western canteen. I was fuming, because I was thinking, I've come here for Sai Baba to help me or to cure me, and this is what he's doing?
It was then at this point, while visiting Sai Baba, that a stranger stepped forward and told Sanjay Vanja of a book, which immediately altered his life.
And it was a chapter on pain and suffering, and that completely changed my life, because what it told me was that Sai Baba is very much with me through this journey, and whatever the pain and suffering is there is kind of he's taking care of me in the process. It just gave me the sort of belief that he's actually here with me and I don't have to worry. Yeah. And that's when the whole thing about you're not the body came in.
And Sanjay's big lesson after coming through so much in life?
What I've learned is that, or it seems to be, is that we talk about good and bad, and there is no good and bad, there just is. Stuff happens, and it's how we deal with it that matters.
On the 102nd birthday of Phyllis Crystal, and her story of her life with Sai Baba.
And I remember one interview where he danced into the room.
Baba danced into the room?
Yes, just wafted in. He looked around and smiled at all of us and said, "You don't know who you are. None of you knows who you are." I was in the back of the room. I was always hiding in the back because I was extremely shy. And Mrs. Crystal, say I am God. I shrank. It was sacrilege, absolutely. And I couldn't do it. Mrs. Crystal, say I am God. I said, Baba, I can't. Mrs. Crystal, say I'm God. Finally, I thought, oh, I've got to get out of this. So just to get it over with, I said, I'm God. No. That was not enough for him. Louder. Finally, I was shrieking it just to get it over with. So this is his message.
Remember, Swami is God. Whatever the mind tells you, remember Swami is God. This man, Subrao, who's an intelligent, educated man, and deeply...
When Sam went off to India, it was frightening, shocking, but then I understood that he was compelled to do that because all the time that I had known him, he was asking, is there a God? What is the meaning of it all? He would look at the sky and say, look at
Experience is silence, is expansion, is pure love. But Swami is telling us, look at you raising into a level now of bliss and peace that is beyond your body, beyond time, beyond death.
Did I hear you right that it was Baba who directed you to come?
I've had some really extraordinary experiences with Bhagwan, which are really mind-blowing.
Extraordinary experiences with Sai Baba? What an understatement.
I was mixing concentrated sulfuric acid and acetic anhydride, and the whole thing exploded into my eye, and I lost both my eyes.
He's an associate professor of chemistry at Sai Baba's University. And incredibly, this is just one of 3 similar stories he has about Sai Baba's healing hand regarding the same problem, blindness. And next time?
And so I continued with my work, and I was working with chromic acid. And I had connected a vacuum pump whose power I did not know because it had just come the previous day. So when I went close to it, the whole thing imploded and threw the acid into both my eyes again.
No! And there was a third story about blindness Ravi learned from, thanks to Sai Baba.
It fell in my eye and it started burning. As the drops were falling, I could feel that it was making holes in my shirt. It was that powerful that I would be very grateful to Bhagwan if till the last breath animates my body, I live for him, I do his service, and I want to live for this.
Dr. Ravi Kumar's connection to Sai Baba dates back to the 1960s. Today, he teaches and serves as warden of the Vrindavan Hostel. Welcome to Sojourns. This interview was recorded in Coronado, California in July 2018.
There was a story of a guru who was just a little child in India, and everyone knew that he was an incarnation of God. I mean, he was living at this, what they call an avatar level. And the people said to him, they were trying to trick him, and one of the people in the tribe said, I'll give you an orange if you can tell me where God is. And he said, I'll give you 2 oranges if you can tell me where God is not.
An elderly spiritual teacher whose name is Sai Baba, who lives in India, comes to you in your dreams.
Right.
Who is Sai Baba? Why does he come to you, and what does he tell you?
I'm not sure why he comes to me. It just started happening several years ago. I started lecturing about this being, and this is someone who lives at God consciousness. See, even as you speak, you can see I get very emotional. I can almost break down and cry right now. It's just, and it's not a tear of sadness.
And my heart goes out to just tell people, hey, listen, if you want to really know about Sai Baba, then come to us. Come to me, ask me. I watched him 24/7, 365 days a year. I was a teenager. I was struggling to find faith, and I found faith by watching him, not by reading a book, not because Vibhuti materialized in some photograph. That would have scared the heck out of me, probably. But this was, I saw what Baba was. He had a huge veranda where you could go out for a walk and get some fresh air. He wouldn't do that because devotees would come and watch him. So in his own room, in his own house, he lived like a prisoner. And yet, there was a sense of incredible freedom, peace in his face, in his presence. And to me, I was saying, where is that secret? What is that secret? That he's not bound by these 4 walls. I could go crazy. You could give me $10 million and tell me to do this. I couldn't do it. I would go mad.
Sojourn's very first interview in 1997 in Berkeley, California, was with the author of this world-famous book. Houston Smith, who once saw Sai Baba, curiously remembered Sai Baba's name being brought up decades ago in the midst of a gathering of scientists at Syracuse University.
At the colloquium, somebody noticed that there was a face that didn't usually turn up. And he was an Indian, obviously, who had come to hear this report on religion in India. So somebody turned to him and said, well, Professor Daniel Smith doesn't know anything about Sai Baba, but the question was asked to you as an Indian, what do you think? And he said, well, I'm an engineering student, I'm a scientist, I don't have that kind of interest. But he said, it does happen that my mother is a devotee, and The only way that I interfaced with Sai Baba was that as a boy, it was part of my daily chores to wipe the ashes off of his photograph that hung on our wall. Now, I'd like to see the Bay Area skeptics duplicate that. But
And when you first decided to go see him in Prashanti Nilayam, was it your mother's idea? Whose idea was this?
Actually, Swami came into my mother's dream and told her, I am waiting for you all, why are you not coming? But she said, I have never seen you, I don't know anything about you. Then she, I am Satya Sai Baba staying in Puttaparthi, so you have to come to Puttaparthi and have my darshan. It was in 1945.
1945.
This was 1945. That was the year I was born. In 1945, Holy Man Sri Satya Sai Baba was only 19 years of age when this 11-year-old schoolgirl, Vijaya Kumari, first met him at the old mandir in Puttaparthi, India. Vijaya kept a diary filled with hundreds of experiences, insights, and observations she had with Sai Baba. Welcome to Sojourns. This interview was recorded in Whitefield, India.
I never had a question. I never asked him anything. I was just content to just be there because I know that he knows everything and I probably don't. But one time he did say to me, look, do you want to ask me a question? And of course I couldn't think of anything intelligent. That's not unusual. So I said to him, Swami, what's the point of this all? Meaning, what's the point of life? And he just looked at me with a twinkle in his eye and he said 5 very important words. And I repeat this often and often. Play the game, be happy.
Okay, that is it. I need to ask a favor of Doug because I've got only about 11 or 12 minutes left on my clock of my allotted time, and I'd like to take an extra 3 or 4 minutes if it's okay, but no more than that. And if it's not okay, there's the hook. Just pull me off the stage. Do we profit by even talking about trying to realize who we are? Do I have any authority or credentials to talk about it? Absolutely not. But I'm a journalist. For what's that worth? And in one respect, it's worth a lot. Like doctors, like lawyers, like priests, like teachers, journalists are credentialed to ask questions. And much to my surprise, over the span of my whole career, 44, getting a paycheck, 10 years in retirement doing Baba's work, that's 54 years of interviewing people. I'm always surprised at how much depth there is to the people who voluntarily talk about their lives. And now I go around asking others to share their insights about their own self-realization. Best job in the world, for me anyway. Most interesting job I've ever had. So when I'm asked, what does it look like to be self-realized? Well, don't ask me, but I've talked to other people who are. I can sometimes offer a somewhat of an informed answer to those questions. Realize people tend to have several characteristics in common. First and foremost, they do not go around talking about their self-realization. Those who do usually are not. Secondly, they have little or no ego, and I'm drawn to that, as I'm sure many of you are, like a magnet. They have copious amounts of love, peace, and joy, and humility and compassion. They live in equanimity. What's equanimity? Well, you know what that is. Here's where I live. Here's where many of my friends live. It's a good day, I'm there. It's a bad day, it's there. It's a better day, I'm there. It's a worse day, it's there. Those at equanimity, they live here. And there's no fluctuating. It just goes till their last breath. But they never die. And it continues after that. And something that might surprise you, realize people often, in fact always, in my interviews, have the same challenges that you and I have. You're driving home late at night, it's raining, it's cold, there's nobody else on the highway, you have a flat tire. You open the door, you get out in the rain, you suffer the cold, you change the tire, and you go on your way. You go to work in the morning, on the bulletin boards, a long list of names being permanently laid off. You find your name there. You go home and you discuss it, you go to bed, you hit the pavement the first thing the next morning, and you walk until you find another job. Maybe it's a better job. Maybe it pays less. If somebody's sick in your home, you take care of them. You do your duty. They're not immune. And something that might surprise you, realize people often have the very same challenges in other areas of their lives too that we do. But they find a way around them with Baba's help. Because they don't pray to their God figure in Baba anymore. They talk to their Baba self. Here's some people I know describe the process of awakening. It's like taking the shortest trip in the world from there to there. From the Ted Henry who knows himself as the mind-body construct, the human experience person living up to 73 years of age, just over here to the I am presence, to the I am self, to the I am awareness, to the I am witness. And that one doesn't have a name. It's the I am. Takes about a nanosecond for that to happen, about as much time as it takes to change a single thought. It's learning to move from the false identity of who you think you are to who you really are. Jody and I practice this every day. And don't ask us how far it's gotten us so far. But Baba says, meditate. Do the thumb meditation. Don't think you're going to get much beyond 6 seconds before a thought intervenes, but do it anyway. We set our clocks every morning. We work at our desk for 4 hours each from 9 to 1. That's 8 hours. And we set our alarms to go off every half hour so we can meditate for 5 seconds. So our interruptions are very short for 5 seconds. Sometimes we forget, but we try to do it regularly. And my meditation has evolved. And currently I can get inside of 5 seconds with a little time to spare, envisioning moving from my Ted Henry physical, human, mind-body self to the I am, which is what I really am. The Sai Baba journey of self-awareness, which I'll get to in a second, I wanted to mention quickly, just remember Baba's words, it's okay to be born into a religion, not okay to die in one. That was hard for me to understand. I will not be dying in my Catholicism. I respect it, I revere it, I am grateful for it. But I surely respect it more so that I'm a follower of Sai Baba. The Sai Baba journey of self-awareness is like being in school. It's a class that never ends. There's no lunch, there's no break, there's no summer recess, there's no graduation, there's no diploma. That's my little alarm going off. I got a couple of minutes and I'm going to wrap it up right now. And when you're in your 40s, you're still in that class. When you're in your 70s, you can still be in that class. When you're on your deathbed, taking your last breath, class is still in session. It's my hunch, can't prove it yet, that following your own physical death, the classwork is still there on your desk. And what I've learned from others about the actual framework of awakening, the I am God that Baba refers to is the I am awareness. It is the vast, empty space that never ends, that never dies, that is alive, that is intelligence, that is your truest identity, that is silent. It is empty. It is empty of all thoughts, all judgments, all biases, all bad memories, all painful moments, all judges, grudges, misdeeds, threats, work, guilt, shame, hates, anger. None of this exists there. In the Ted Henry I am awareness, Ted Henry awareness, it exists. The Ted Henry who's the observer in human form, there it exists. There's why my mood goes like this, but in the I am awareness, it's empty. Sat Chitananda only. So the bliss that's a component of Sat Chitananda is allowed to be unsmothered by everything else and flourish. Hence everybody's lofty state of being at that time. Remember Baba's lesson of the empty hand. I was fortunate enough to have him pull this little trick on me. I knew the answer. I'd seen him do it before in the videos, and he came up in my first interview, 1999. Hey, what do you see there? Smug as I was, Baba, I see nothing there. Yes, in that nothing is everything. And your elevated I am awareness is everything. It's completely empty, but it's filled with Baba's love, your self-love. Finally, my last comments before I get tossed out of here. People who are realized are grateful. Where's my note, Doug? Somebody told me today that you're always walking around muttering, be grateful for everything. Doesn't mean you have to like it. The good, bad, and the ugly happens to us all. Eventually, as Baba devotees, you've already learned far beyond me, I'm sure, to be grateful for the good, the bad, and the ugly. You realize, as those who are realized know, there is no bad. What they once thought of as failure or misfortune, I now see as an impetus, a little bit of a nudge, a spurt, a push, a shove to get you to address this question more forthrightly, to move from duality to non-duality. You, the one. I've learned to be grateful for absolutely everything. I can tell you from the pain of my own life how true this is. Why would I do that? Stand here and tell you about my own pain. I want to make a point. It's no different than your pain. Maybe it's less. Arguably it is for some of you. For some of you, maybe it's more. Doesn't matter. In my wider family, there's been much illness. My sister died an agonizing death. I'm one of 6 kids. I walked into the room where she was hospitalized for her last breath. My mother died in my arms. I lost a marriage once. My first wife wanted out of the marriage. I found it my job to tell my kids, my parents, and my in-laws, I didn't tell a living soul for 6 weeks. I couldn't tell anybody. And I had to do the news at 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock every night, carrying this burden. I had to redefine what it meant to compartmentalize. It was not an easy task. 6 weeks in, I couldn't do it anymore. I'm walking down the hall one night when one of our weekday commentators, Dr. Ken Chalker, who's one of the most prominent clergymen in Cleveland from the church right across the street from us at 30th and Euclid in Cleveland, ran into me. The lights were half dim. The time was right. My courage was there, and I was broken. And I said, Ken, do you have a minute? And he says, Ted, I've got all the time in the world. I can see you are in a world of hurt right now. What is going on in your life? And I told him, and I said, I haven't told a soul. You're the first. I'd like to ask a favor. What's the favor, Ted? I'll do anything I can to help you. Would you pray to Jesus? Would you pray to God that this is healed, this marriage? He looked down at the tops of his shoes, and then he spent a long time, it seemed, looking at the tiles in the ceiling. And then he looked at me and took a deep breath and said, Ted, I don't think I can do that. I don't know that that's what God wants me to do. I didn't like that answer. I was grateful for all the good things in my life at that time, but I was not grateful for the hurtful things. I'm sharing this with you to make the point that once my father told me about something that caused a lot of pain. My father never uttered a negative word in my whole life. There's 6 of us kids. Never raised a hand, never raised his voice, never used anything but supportive language. Consistently, we knelt down in the living room and prayed the rosary at night as a family of 8 with my mom and dad. Never said anything negative until just about a year before he died. When Jody and I married, you see, I didn't have my previous marriage annulled by the Catholic Church, and that meant that I was under a pain of a mortal sin and would go to hell. We had a minister marry us who was a Sai Baba minister. And she did a wonderful job. My parents boycotted the marriage. All my siblings were there. All my relatives, some of my relatives, no, I'm trying to remember. Our friends were there, but not my parents. My parents didn't attend the wedding because they thought I had forsaken Jesus as Lord and Savior. I didn't, but it didn't matter. My dad considered me to be a heretic, someone considerably above the Word of God. After always being kind and loving and supportive his whole life, just before he died, my father stood and looked me in the eyes when I was visiting him. We were the only two in the house. And he said these words. He said, I just want you to know that my eternity in heaven will be forever darkened by the knowledge that my son will never be there. And not so long later, he died. That's how my father went to his death. I asked Baba over and over driving home, how do I take this? I love my father. I can't find it in my heart to be mad too much, but boy, what a guilt trip. What an awful thing to say. Why didn't he know? Why was he so good up until the very last months before he died? How could this happen, Swami? Now I know. Because everything drives us to the Baba within, the Buddha within, the Jesus within, the Allah within. And I now believe Baba, hook, line, and sinker. Our beloved Baba is not a punisher. I am certainly not a masochist. I'm too chicken to be a masochist. But in this illusory world, illusory bad things happen to good people. That's the clearest way to say it. Until we see everything conspires in our lifetime to push us closer to the point of cracking that egg of awakening to our truest self. Don't get me wrong, I'm not there yet, but I want us all to be there in this lifetime. Because Jyoti and I know it's possible. Jai, Jai, Jai Sai Ram.
Saram, everyone. Brother Ted, from the bottom of our hearts, can we thank you for just a wonderful exposition of the theme of this retreat. Beginning with your three burning questions, who am I, why am I here, and what's it all about? You took us on a wonderful journey to see and really feel the truth of Baba's injunction to all of us of wake up to your own self and wake up to the truth within. I particularly also liked the fact that you made a distinction between realizing it in your mind and feeling it in your heart, because I think the experiential part of it is something that we all aspire to, and that's the only way that we will ever get to where Baba wants us to be. And secondly, Swami always says that the stories of the devotees of the Lord are as sweet as the Lord himself, and the Lord has often said also that he is bound. The only thing that binds him is the love of his devotees. So thank you so much for bringing some of his devotees to us and allowing us to share in their love of Swami. Thank you so much again. It was wonderful. So, coming down to practicality. Again, I had just a few short announcements. Whoever hasn't picked up their car keys at the service desk desk after valet parking, please do so. However, there are a number of keys there, so if you are intending to leave tonight, please pick your keys up after this talk. If you're only leaving tomorrow, please pick it up tomorrow so that there's not such a big rush at the desk. Tomorrow morning, between 7 and 9 a.m. in the infirmary, there is the medical and dental professionals will be there in case anybody would like to see them. There's also a concurrent session on preventive health, which will take place from 7:45 to 9. So please do take advantage of this opportunity. A reminder that the bone marrow drive is still on, will be on this evening between 7 and 9, and then during the breaks again tomorrow. And the owner of a Honda Odyssey, silver PA plate JPV 9235, your windows are open, and hopefully you haven't been completely, just drenched by the rain, whatever you had in the car. So if that belongs to anybody, please go and check. Then a change about our normal program. Normally, the cultural program that takes place on both Saturday and Sunday evenings takes place after dinner. This year, we have a change. So the SSE program, which is tonight, will take place between 5:15 and 6:45, and after that will be dinner, which will be served at 7. And then finally, as Doug mentioned this morning, we are lucky enough to have campfires on both days during this retreat. So tonight, between 9:15 and 9:45, please come out to the campfire area and enjoy that part of our satsang. Jai Sai Ram.